Welcome back. Tim Thiessen live from Fresno, California, reaching out to the Central Valley and via the internet to the world. And it's just amazing. We want to welcome our viewers today in Washington, D.C., Germany, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt are offline because the government there has turned off the internet. So shame on them. So anyway, my next guest is Michael Harris. He's with the Brotherhood of the Badge here, based in Fresno. And Mike, welcome, and thanks for coming on board today. Mike, just introduce yourself to our audience and a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk about the Brotherhood of the Badge.
Well, let's see. I'm a peace officer by trade. I've been at that business for about 39 years. Transplanted to California from Texas when I was a youngster, and made the Valley my home, and can't say that I've regretted it much. So times have been prosperous, and life is good.
Well, that's good. Yeah, this is I'm a native here of the Valley, and I live 9 miles from where I was born and raised. I haven't, but as far as in my opinion, regardless of what's going on in the Valley right now in the state of California, this is the greatest place on earth, and we have so much going on here. You're the chairman or president of the Brotherhood of the Badge, based out of Fresno. So why don't you tell us about the Brotherhood of the Badge and really how it started and what it is and what you do, and then we're going to start talking some issues on that.
Okay, well, I guess the best way to describe it, it's an organization with great emphasis on the law enforcement community and then recently into the firefighting services. What we do is we supply surplus and sometimes new safety equipment to the troops that we have deployed around the world, primarily now in Iraq and Afghanistan, with the type tools that we use here in the States, and they ultimately train and equip the forces in those two countries to get them up to speed. Our ultimate goal is to get our folks out of there. So if we can get these people equipped with the equipment they need to do their job, the tools they need to do their job, it additionally bolsters their confidence to get out there, and then hopefully they'll get shot at instead of our folks.
Well, there you go. How did this all come about? Where was this idea hatched, or what really motivated you and others on your team to start this and become such a dynamic organization?
Well, kind of a funny story. It started one night when I had a little indigestion after eating pizza. I was watching the late news. I saw this scenario being played out in Iraq where this young Iraqi officer was standing to the left side of a doorway, and then one of our Marines on the right side of the doorway, and they're both looking inside this dark room. Obviously something there was perilous, so after a couple of conversations, the Marine bursts into the room, disappears from view, and the Iraqi just stands there. Well, in my world of law enforcement, we operate on the premise of mutual aid. When another agency needs help, we go and help. We don't necessarily take on the lead role. So to me, there was a great deal wrong with that picture. So I tried to analyze, well, why is it that way? Our folks are taking the first line portion of the fight, and the Iraqi were standing back watching. Well, I did note that young man had on a blue shirt, some pants, an old rusty AK-47, and sandals. He didn't have any equipment to work with, where our Marine was decked out in his Kevlar helmet, vest, and all the battle equipments they need to go to war. So I got to thinking about it. Would outfitting these folks with the equipment they need get them to the point where they could actually take over the job that our troops are doing for them? And so I started to kind of think about where this equipment could come from. Well, having been in law enforcement, for over 3 decades, I know that every police agency I've ever seen, somewhere in their basement, in a closet, in a storehouse, they have all this stuff stacked up that's either been outdated by technology or just worn out by use. And in the case of Fresno, that was what I found to be. And then I also discovered that, or at the time didn't think about, but I did discover that what do you do with this stuff when you're surplusing it out or you're done with it? You can't just throw it in the dumpster, because then the crooks will become bulletproof.
Right, absolutely.
So in our case here locally, it was taken out to a metal yard, chopped up at an expense, and then taken out to a landfill and buried at an expense. So putting two to two together, it made sense to, well, let's collect this stuff and take it someplace where it can be used instead of paying for the expense to destroy it. So that kind of brought the Brotherhood of the Badge concept to let's help the officers around the world, or at least in the war zones. So I approached the chief of police about, hey, what do you think about surplusing this stuff to our troops in Iraq or something like that? And of course, the chief, being responsible for everything, immediately brought up the liability issue. So I thought, well, let's proceed forward with getting the liability issue waived, and we did that. And then the chief got on board wholeheartedly with our department, and then ultimately assisted us through the city council. And the city council here locally, with the help of Mayor Autry at the time, adopted our program, and we were off and running. The first obstacle I ran across was the tremendous expense of shipping, because this stuff does take up considerable weight, especially so in the firefighting equipment. So we started fundraisers, and we had Grizzlies baseball game fundraisers and Fresno Falcons hockey fundraisers to start generating money for this, and we're able to ship small increments. So that wasn't really making an impact. Well, one of our board members, Officer Brian Burry, who just recently retired from the police department, and who is a very tenured, experienced veteran of the military. He's actually a combat veteran, a medic, special forces in Vietnam. We got to talking about, well, how can we do this? And he says, well, let's ship it with deploying military units, and in fact, let's take some of it over there ourselves. Mm-hmm. Well, what a great opportunity that was. And we were able to orchestrate a trip into Iraq with a substantial load of equipment, and immediately it became a smash hit.
I was going to ask you, how well was this received on the other end?
Well, it was kind of an interesting scenario being played out as we arrived. Because of issues of liability, we had to put a little disclaimer on the equipment that it was surplus. Mm-hmm. Some of it expired by date, and use at your own risk. Well, some of the folks took a look at it and says, well, you're just giving us your junk. And so I did a little demonstration. I actually took the vest right off of Brian's body, threw it over a piece of plywood, and fired about a dozen rounds into it, and then showed it to him. Look, no holes. Mm-hmm. Well, that swept away any doubts that this stuff
very important when you're being shot at. No
exactly.
Holes.
Yeah. So that kind of put their minds at ease, and we took other equipment in addition to ballistic vests, such as ride helmets, flashlights, radios, and chargers were a tremendous hit, because that's something that they do not have or did not have. Mm-hmm. And communications in almost any endeavor is essential, if you want to come out on the winter side. So we made a very good impact on our first trip over.
Well, now, besides bulletproof vests, what other types of equipment have you been furnishing as far as police services equipment and fire protection equipment?
Well, in our time as an organization, which is basically we started in about 2004, we've collected a substantial amount of money, almost totaling about $3 million from donors. And with that money, we were able to purchase a lot of new equipment. The vests were the primary objective, but we've sent literally thousands of pairs of new boots, because those folks pretty much operate in sandals, and that's not really conducive to a warrior attire.
Right.
So boots are a big hit with them. Rechargeable flashlights by the hundreds, something that's quite necessary if you're doing night operations. Mm-hmm. Radios by the hundreds with the charging capabilities. You can't go to the 7-Eleven there and buy a pack of batteries, right. So you have to redo them. And all the other stuff, like riot batons, riot shields, things like that, were just stuff that we collected around the state. And we've garnered equipment from over about 110 agencies all across the United States that have heard about us, because everybody accepts this program. It's on both sides of the political aisle.
But it did start here in Fresno.
In Fresno, California.
This was ground zero here, and then it's expanded out.
And it still is.
Okay, that's good. See, there's positive things happening in Fresno, no matter what Forbes magazine or anybody else says. on that. You had mentioned something to me when I first met you last fall during the campaign, and we had the opportunity to visit a little bit, just about the psychological effect it's had on the police forces there. Because, as you stated very clearly, is our objective as the United States is not to occupy Iraq or Afghanistan. It's to help them get on their feet, and then it's time for us to leave.
Well, I assume that is our countrywide objective. It is my personal objective.
Right,
Let's
absolutely.
get our kids out of there. I'm kind of like Patton. Hey, let the other guy die for his country.
There you go.
But the Iraqi people are no different than anyone else. I think when it comes to terms of wanting the same things we all want. They want to educate their kids, put a meal on the table, have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Basically it's no different than here. But under that dictator regime that they lived on, opportunities for education and going out and bettering themselves really wasn't there. So that's an objective that we also have to instill in these folks. When we take this equipment to the people training in the police and firefighting services, you can look at them, and I can't even tell you the number of times that I've seen these new upstart Iraqi police officers, cadets, or academy graduates, or whatever their term may be, put that vest on and they pound that chest and they just become bulletproof. Mm-hmm. Then they kind of have that initiative instilled in them that now I can do this job probably as good as my American counterpart. And I think that has a tremendous value in addition to just that equipment we give to them.
Well, absolutely, and in all of life too is it's all about our confidence in what we do. And I mean, if you're basically barefooted or sandals, wearing a street shirt or less or a T-shirt, and you're facing it's a dangerous world everywhere we live. Whether
That's
it's
true.
I mean, we have our issues here at home. You get into places like Iraq and Afghanistan and other parts of the world right now, it's very dangerous. And if you're being viewed as an authoritarian or a person with authority as a police officer in Iraq, you are going to be shot at. It's just the bottom line. And this has got to be very scary to go in there pretty well in street clothes without this protection that you furnish.
That's true. That carries on a little bit with these folks, too. If you've seen media coverage of the war efforts, a lot of times you'll see these fellows running around with black hoods over their faces. Sometimes they need to disguise themselves as to who they are, even though, their shoulder patch says Iraqi police, because these bad folks will actually follow you home and kill your whole family.
Is that right?
So they have issues that they have to deal with that fortunately for us in this country, we never have to even think about it.
Right. And we'll be talking a little more about this. We'll be right back. We're going to take a commercial break here, and we'll be right back with Mike Harris with the Brotherhood of the Badge. Stay tuned.